Welcome to the Inspiration North podcast, inspiring stories from inspirational people and how they found their passion, their true north. I'm James Eves.
And I'm Michelle Minikin, and this is the Inspiration North podcast.
Today's episode, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, with Steph Shilling. We talk about if you lose your passion for something, you can find another. Everyone does not have to like you. And if you trust your intuition and follow your heart, things have a way of working out.
Steph is the creator and owner of Studio Velo, a boutique fitness studio close to the coast in Whitley Bay. Having worked as a general dentist for 14 years, Steph ceased practicing dentistry in March this year to teach Pilates and run the health and fitness studio she founded in October 2017. A mum of 3 and lover of the coast, interiors, art, and of course health and well-being, Steph hopes to make Pilates more accessible to healthcare professionals who so often suffer both physically and psychologically whilst giving so much to care for their patients.
We're in Whitley Bay today with Steph. Tell us, did you know what you wanted to be when you were little?
Actually, no, I did not know I thought I did know what I wanted to be when I was quite small, and that was an astronaut, like lots of children. Cool. Yeah. I had a book about the moon, a ladybird book, which I loved, and I used to read over and over. And I wanted to go to the moon. I don't even really like flying, so I think that would have probably been a poor choice of career.
Training would have been difficult for that.
Yeah, it would have been. That disappeared, and then for a long time I did think about being an author. I used to write a lot of books, which mini books my mum still finds around the house, largely about a cat, a dog and a frog who lived on a log.
That would sell.
Yeah. That might not have been the career for me either, but yeah, it was fun. And then you kind of forget about those things and you just get into school, and academically everything was okay. Languages were not for me. I was actually asked to drop German, even though I was supposed to take it because I was in higher sets. Language is definitely not my thing, but sciences and art and most of the other subjects really enjoyed, and ended up really enjoying the sciences. So that's when I got more into the mindset of I would do something to do with biology or along those lines, and it was like marine biology or veterinary sciences. So I settled on wanting to be a vet for quite a long time, and then later that changed before I went off to university. So
you were, I guess you were an animal lover. Is that one of the reasons that
absolutely.
You thought? So when you were getting to a point of studying, and you mentioned in our pre-chat that you were sitting there doing initial studies for veterinary science, and then there was something that you thought,
Yeah, so by this point I changed schools and area, so I did a high school over in the Tyne Valley. Even though I lived in Newcastle, my dad was a senior teacher there, so I know you've had other people who've had parents and teachers in the school. So and you too. Yeah, your dad's the head. Oh man, yeah.
I got no special treatment there. That was the rule.
Yeah, no, you don't. I think it's worse. I saw you rocking on your chair, or I think it's harder for them in retrospect. Actually, I'll come back to that. But so I was at high school, and my dad was a chemist, and I was doing pretty well in sciences, and it just seemed like that was definitely the way I was going to go. I did love art as well, and I did art A-level. My mum was really arty, and I remember as a kid, like she used to paint, draw. She did photography for a while, actually developed them. Like we had one math room, and I remember as a kid having to hold my way in because my mum was developing in the bathroom, and it was a dark room. So I was like banging on the door. That was something she did, and that rubbed off as well. And even though I loved that, it just wasn't what was expected. And I'm not necessarily there talking about my dad. I'm talking about the entire environment you're in. It's almost like it just seemed a natural progression. So I went on this. I was lucky, actually. There was a little thing in Nottingham where you could go on, and you stayed overnight, and you went to lectures about veterinary science and what it would be like. And literally I was sitting there, and it was just out of the blue, like, I don't want to work with animals, I want to work with people. I'm not even sure where it came from. My brother at this point was already studying medicine in Glasgow. And I just realised, I'd made the wrong decision. There was still time to change. So when I put in my UCAS forms and all the rest of it, I applied for medicine. And I think part of that was following my brother's footsteps. I've actually just thought this now. If I'm actually really honest with myself, I think probably it was I felt like I'd make more of a difference if I did medicine, and I'd be less... doing something less if I didn't live up to that, I guess. I love working with people anyway, so there's definitely genuine element of that, but I think there probably was something within me thinking it was better to make a difference with people than with animals.
Were you thinking then about becoming a GP, or is it something you start medicine and then you move into more of a specialisation?
Yeah, I think the ideas I had behind it, I didn't see myself as a GP, actually. I think a lot of GPs don't from the beginning, from what I gather. But I probably thought psychiatry or surgery. I know they're very different. But, yeah, they were the two. I always worked with my hands, and that was my art side. So I think... But then you've got a lack of patient contact often in surgery. So, yeah, it was something I toyed with while I was studying medicine. And I should explain in the middle of all this. So... Nick, my husband, seems a bit random, but we met at school. He was in my class from 14 and we got together at 17. So I followed my brother up to Glasgow because I used to go and visit him, and great city, great night out. We used to go up there and have the best time when I was when he was at uni, and I would go up. And I wanted to stay in Newcastle for Nick, and everybody said to me, don't stay for your first boyfriend. It's not going to work out, and... It is pretty naive and it is pretty unlikely to think that it will, but I knew how I felt at that age. My parents have been together since they were the same age. And yeah, it was a lot of pressure, and it was like, okay, I'm going to go away. I have to do this. I haven't travelled. So I took a year out just to sort of hesitate and be around a bit more. He was already working full time. He left school and didn't do A-levels. And so I had the year out. I worked with disaffected children on a project in the Meadowell estate. It was really interesting. I had lots of random jobs actually. And then I went away to Glasgow and met some brilliant people, but I was miserable. He was miserable. He'd come up visiting, and he would be shaking, and you laugh at this now. And I was on the phone. So I met this little handful of people, and I was only there about 4 weeks, and I managed by the skin of my teeth to transfer to Newcastle. I had to go and see the dean, and I had a big interview with the dean at Newcastle, and he had a pipe. He was blowing smoke in my face, I can remember. Wouldn't happen now. No. And he did ask me, he said, is this about a boy? I can't believe he asked that.
Probably seen it before.
And I lied.
No.
Yeah, no, of course it's not.
Nothing to do with boys.
We'd started a new course, what was it called? Problem-based learning or something. They were doing it a new way, so I blamed it on the new course. And had to take another year out, but then started at Newcastle. And I still see the friends that I was there about 3-4 weeks. And there's some a handful of our very best friends, see them every year. So no regrets.
There's a lot of studying, isn't there? When you're getting into medicine, dentistry, veterinary science. So at what point did you kind of come to a conclusion, I want to help people, but it's more specifically linked to their teeth?
It wasn't about that, to be honest. It was never about teeth for me. So again, this is how you sometimes get led down an avenue and it isn't really for you, but you just, you do what's right. I did really enjoy medicine, I think, because various reasons. I can't blame it on my brother or just that, you watch it on telly, there's casualty, it's glamorous, I did love human biology. I'm fascinated by it. You're going to dissect bodies. That's exciting. I mean, it's gruesome and a bit macabre, but, when you've just bits of it, I can't remember what we cut up in school, like frogs and bullseyes. And
the two classics, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well,
I was outside. I wasn't having anything to do
not
with that.
Having that.
I know.
You'd be the kid that fainted.
Yeah.
No, that was me. That was it. I'll just watch.
Yeah, there was always a few.
I think there was a rat as well. My
biology teacher brought roadkill in one day. She brought a badger. Awesome. And it was covered in fleas. I just remember.
I used to play with the stick insect in biology. I used to love it. We used to put the stick insects on the teacher.
I like stick insects.
Cool. Just like, we were horrible.
Yeah. Poor stick insect.
Sorry, Mrs. Taylor.
Bet you loved you. No.
So it was all fun, it was glamorous.
So it was, you sort of see that side of things, and it was fun. But you realise first couple of years are a slog. So you've done pretty hard. A-levels, I think, the hardest things you'll ever do, unless you're going to go on and do crazy stuff. It's a lot of rote learning, so it's pretty dull. Parts of it are pretty dull. You're not allowed to do a lot, and you start your clinical years, especially in third year, and it's a lot of history taken. I did actually try to leave medicine after second year, but they wouldn't release me. Medicine at Newcastle, I think they hold your funding or something. So they literally said, no, this is tough years. A lot of people feel like this. You'll feel different when you get on clinics next year. So I did the whole of third year, and academically it was fine. I'm lucky I'm pretty good at exams. I think it was you said that, about yourself. Learn it, forget it. You know.
I can remember it for a couple of days and then that's it. It's gone forever.
Yeah. Well, I was really good
the
at
crown
that.
queen.
Yeah. Osmosis, you put the books underneath your pillow, and then it just goes into your head. You're not listening. Yeah.
Put the headphones on, go to sleep.
Yeah, there we go.
I kind of, it took a whole other year to convince him, all the way knowing it wasn't right. And then, without going too long about it, I had gone on to an oncology and dermatology ward, and it was part of the RVI that's completely brand new now, but at the time, the smell in that place, it was awful. And I'm not squeamish at all, but I just went in this day, and I was probably a little bit hungover. And I opened the doors and the smell, and I just knew it was wrong. And I actually excused myself, went out and I rang my mum and dad. I mean, mum and dad were amazing. They've always been so supportive. And I was like, can I do this anymore? And my mum was just not surprised. We knew, you know.
Isn't it funny? Know. We get a few guests on where, I remember recently it was Neville, wasn't it? Oh. Where you come to the conclusion that this isn't for me anymore. Yeah. And then you tell your partner, your family, and they're all like, oh yeah, we've known this for months. We
totally know this. Yeah, exactly.
but why didn't you tell me anything? Oh, well, it's your own decision, and it's you've got to come to that conclusion yourself, don't you? But it's very common.
It is, and I think you do. You hide it almost from yourself. So the weird thing is, this day I went to the dental school again, so I just thought, and what attracted me to dentistry is where they started. So weirdly, the smell in the dental school was like really that oil of clothes. I liked the little tunics. I don't know. It just looked nice. I knew I'd work with my hands. It seemed more straightforward, and by this point me and Nick knew we wanted a family. I knew it was pretty straightforward career for a woman. The advances aren't as much. The rat race isn't quite the same. It doesn't move on as quickly. You can work part-time. There was a lot of that in it as well, practicality. So I went and I just said, can I get in? And they said, there's something strange has happened. Literally the same day, can you take a seat? And it turned out somebody had been going on the next year who was an anatomy student, and they were going into second year, and they'd rung up that day to say they didn't want the place that morning, so I could then go into second year. I still had to, so I did 7 years in total. I had to do three medicine, 4 dentistry. But yeah, it was one of those kind of meant to be moments, which seems funny even though I left eventually, but no, I don't regret my time there, and I definitely practiced a long time. I know it did a lot of good, and I really did enjoy it. So yeah, it made the transition, and it was great. I loved the course. Yeah. And from there on, and it's a great career. I would never, just because I've left now, I wouldn't put people off dentistry. If that's what you want to do, it is definitely a great career there. It's just quite hard within the NHS at the moment, I think.
What do you think was the main change for you? Because it's caring for patients, but there's an element of that wasn't quite hitting the mark, was it?
Do you mean
in that? So when you talk about dental units, and
So
there are certain targets to hit.
What's hard about it? Yeah, units of dental activity is the way this system works at the minute. So principals basically they get their funding by how hard you work or how you work in a certain way. You have to tick these boxes, and it's not a perfect system by a long shot. There's been lots of different ways dentistry's happened in the past, fee for item. They all come with the pros and cons, but the system at the minute is very difficult. That's why a lot of people are moving into the private sector. But I just felt, dentistry's funny. It's one of those things, a little bit like hairdressing, where people are very open with you. Often I think they've got nerves to come in, but you're right in their personal space in a really intimate environment. They've got to trust you. They're quite vulnerable. A lot of people, as I say, are phobic, and they tell you all sorts. So there'll be, people, and you've built up a relationship for years with families, and people will come in and they'll literally tell you stuff like, my husband's next in, he's out, and you'll know Jim or whoever's there, he's just been diagnosed with terminal cancer, so then she might break down, you feel, you can't squash that into 10 minutes and just kind of open your mouth now. You will sit with that person, but then behind it, you're worried. You know there's a waiting room of people, you're not going to make your target for the day. Or I had a lady once tell me her son had committed suicide, things like that. They do come out with a lot of things. And I loved the human side of it, talking to people. It's a great part of the job, and people are really appreciative. There's a lot that's hard about it. And I worked real working class areas. But there's a lot of good, and it's just pretty hard environment, and I think a lot of people are strained in that environment at the moment.
And it's one of those things, unlike having your hair done, you're obviously working in someone's mouth, so I remember always makes me laugh, my dentist will be asking me questions while he's doing work, and all you can do is like good at
deciphering what they're saying.
Like blink twice, James, for yes, once for no. I
know, it's awful habit dentists have. I dare say I do it quite a lot as well.
But it's, so I can understand that you're caring it's not just about dental health, is it? There's another role.
There's a wider
part of that, but you obviously don't then have the time that allows you to have those conversations, because you've got to get people through.
It's one of the most, what I found, and I know from talking to colleagues of mine, that it's one of the most stressful things, that you sometimes feel you can't be the person you want to be. And that you'll come across as hard, or you just have to get on with the job at hand. And that's like anything now. GPs have exactly the same. It's life in general, but I think in dentistry it is particularly hard, because people, as I say, it's surprising, but people do really open up to you, and they're also, for the rest of it, they're then stuck with the mouth open. So it's almost like you have to let them vent, and you have to get anything you're going to communicate done beforehand. And build up trust if you don't know them that well. It's an interesting career, but it is intense, and you've got to have a really good poker face. So I'm very transparent, but in dentistry, actually, because if things go wrong, major things, if something's not going quite right, or taking longer, or teeth snap, things do go wrong. You don't want to let that get across with your eyes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've got the mask. Yeah, you've just got to be the calmest. And I think sometimes you leave at the end of the day, and you're like, because you've used all your energy, in transactions like that, just trying to,
It's a lot of emotion to actually take on board as well, isn't it? If you're hearing lots of stories of tragedy and upset and nerves, it's a lot. Also
transference of fear, and you do, not that we're painful, but obviously needles, people are scared of that and things, and you get better at that, but you definitely do pick up from people. And if you've had a lot of nervous patients in a day, or it's quite exhausting.
All the anxiety is quite catching.
Yeah, it is. And
so
if you
run
late,
why am I worried? I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, and the running late's a thing as well, because it gets the waiting room up a height. So if they're waiting, they're more nervous, and it just has that knock-on effect. So that's why you try to stay on time, but it's not always possible. So it's a funny one, but
So there's obviously a realization then that I'm not quite feeling this anymore. This was something I was really passionate about, caring about people, but then you've got to this point of, a bit like back in school, it's like something's not quite right. I'm not quite feeling this anymore. So what was next?
So I think a lot of us have that thing where you're doing your job mainly from money. You're doing it before you get back, but it becomes the same. And I've never liked routine. I know some people really enjoy routine. I hate it. Yeah. Groundhog Day, that whole feeling. I would love waking up every day not having a clue what's going on, and that would be great. Yeah. So I think as soon as it started, and I only ever worked part-time, so I actually had my first son. I've got 3 children. I had my son Luca. I was pregnant on VT, which is like a post-training year, and I went back when he was, so I'm going off target here, but that way when he was 8 weeks old, because I had just qualified.
Wow.
And so my mum, it was 2 days, and my mum had him, and it actually didn't feel that much of a bind, except for breastfeeding it. I just thought, you have to express, it would be fine, but no one tells you if you haven't done it long enough, it's just going to stop. So there were things like that were hard, but it was a short time, and he was with his grandma and granddad, and my parents, I should say, and they had a great bond with him. But yeah, so you do all. So yeah, I had the family, and I think it just becomes part of your life. That's why I was going that name part-time, and it was fine. But I'd always worked in the fitness industry. So when I talked about my jobs between uni, I had worked, and I was a spin instructor for a bit. And I've always been aware that for me to manage stress, I need to exercise. And I'm not necessarily one of those people that has to run every day, but if I leave it too many days, I get anxious or I get stressed. And I've always had a little bit of anxiety since childhood, and no real reason, just me. And so I've managed it with that. But I started to think there's nowhere cool to go. I'm bored. Again, not like I'm bored of the gym. And I was seeing all of these little boutique places popping up in London or wherever. And I was like, that's pretty cool. And I used to be a lady who taught spinning. She was a cyclist. She'd done the Tour de France and things, Tour de France route. And she used to teach really differently. So more in your mind, and using visualization, not screaming, go faster, or turning your resistance up so you're nearly dying.
Like, dude, I'm going to be sick.
Don't touch my bike.
Get back.
Slap.
Wait till she turns it back. Turn it back down.
Yeah, exactly. This is where I want
It's like, dude, if you could feel the pain in my legs right now, you would not be turning.
So just
this
for reference, nobody touches our bikes in there but you. So yeah, I had this idea, and then on and off it was there. It never went. So I think a lot of us have these passions or little burning things, and you took it away, or you do it yourself as a hobby, or you don't actually think it could viably be an option. And then fate stepped in for me. So I would have probably continued on that pathway. And I know like Fee Monroe, she was amazing. I loved that podcast. But people often have a huge thing that happens in their life, a death, a terminal illness, whatever it might be. I was so lucky that my big step in was a broken finger, which isn't a big deal to anyone else, but as a dentist, it just didn't heal. It was a tendon on my right hand, and because you have to wear a splint, I didn't have cross infection. My procedures couldn't be good enough, and it just didn't heal. So I ended up being off 6 months, which is crazy because people have huge things and get back to work quicker. And I felt like a fraud. I felt quite pathetic, and I was actually sacked when I was off, because dentists are self-employed. A lot of people don't really, well, most dentists are self-employed, and no hard feeling to them. They had their units, they had their, it was a business decision. So here I was with my silly finger. I found a new job, but you start thinking maybe this has happened for a reason. So yeah, I started to pursue the idea of the studio, boutique fitness, doing things I would like to go to myself, other people might like it as well. And then I got the fear again and stepped back again. And I think this happens a lot. You're 2 steps forward and then you're just like, oh, what am I doing? This feels crazy. And then just as I was about to start a new dental job, I went snowboarding before I snapped my wrist.
It's like... So the universe was saying, we're going to break
somebody
your finger.
up there. If you don't listen,
finger wasn't
it's going to get worse.
It's going to be your leg next.
Yeah, like the mafia.
Or do your kneecaps.
Oh gosh, it didn't have to go much further, thankfully. So I did. I actually did do the finger on the other. I didn't mean to do that. I did actually do the finger.
She just stuck a finger up at me.
I did do a rude gesture there. It was the middle finger.
So Steph gets the award for the rudest guest.
Sorry.
At the end of your award ceremony.
Never allowed on here again. Taking that back. So yes, God, the universe, fate, whatever, you have it, kept stepping in, and it was like, enough already. I'll have the courage. So I was extremely lucky that I had the backing of my parents, who didn't have the whole, you've studied for this many years, we have paid this amount of money for you to do this. Even, they are amazing. At 40, I was nearly 40, a dentist. My husband has a really good job, but we're not great savers. And they loaned me some money to help start it up. So they couldn't have been better, because
there's often this thing, isn't there, that if you do something you're passionate about, something creative, something sporty, I'm going to go into art, I'm going to make pottery, I'm going to paint.
Yeah.
It's one of those things which is like, oh, well, that's not a career.
Yeah.
So you're a bit bonkers. Did you have any...
I had that all the way along in my head. So, but people as well, I would come across people who were like, almost like, you're wasting taxpayers' money. And I was like, well, I was a dentist for 15 years,
Because it's like, why would you want to leave being a dentist? Cool job.
So many people said, why would you want to do that? And for me, I think I just come to the end of the road and what I had to offer there.
And I've got a sore
finger.
I've got a finger too. You had some fingers for them as well.
Yeah. Have I shown you my finger?
Have I shown you before? So, nobody wants to see a dentist with a broken finger. Come on,
no, but put my broken finger in your mouth.
Don't. But yeah, you do get that, and actually, I'm really lucky in that my parents and my mum, this sticks in my mind. She said, often she'd bump into people and they'd say, how are the kids doing now? And what are the kids doing? And my brother would be like, so she would say, one's a GP and and they would be like, oh, you must be so proud. And my mum always said to me, I've never really got that. I would be so proud whatever you did. And she's like, so I know certain people attach a status or prestige to it. I've never felt the loss of that because I don't think I ever had the feeling of it. And I didn't go into it for those reasons. So yeah, when people come at you with that, I just kind of let it float over. And
it's kind of it's the measure of. We've talked in other podcasts about the measure of success, and it should often be not what's the social status, what's the income, what's the car that your kids are driving. It's are your children happy and are they enjoying what they're doing in life?
It's that Heath Ledger quote.
As a measure, yes,
absolutely.
I was just thinking of that one.
And as a parent, it sounds
good.
like a cliche.
We'll get her on the researcher team.
Yeah, but that's a great quote, that, and so poignant given what he did. And for me and my kids, you just want them to be happy. One of my biggest things at the minute, and I think it is filtering down into schools now, is doing not choosing just what you're good at, choosing something that you love, even if you're better at something else. Where's your passion? You might not know as a kid, but you do know what you love to do. Like I did always love art. So as I said, I think if you took your need to want to be creative in a box, and I watched my brother do it, and funnily enough, he's private person, I won't get into, but he has his own thing on the side of his. He's a birder, he's very creative, he's collating a book at the minute. Cool. And I think if you don't have that outlet and you for whatever reason need to do it, you become stressed, you become very deeply unhappy, often without realising it. I would say, and I say it to my kids all the time, my son, my eldest son's 14, and he doesn't really need to be creative in that sense, but my daughter, she absolutely needs to potter and to draw. He does it in different ways, but he's more football, he's very physical. But I think if you're one of those people, I think we're all artistic, but I think some people need to do it more than others. I think if you're one of those and you took it away for the sake of money or getting further on your career or just not fitting it into your life, you'll pay the price at some point in some way or other.
It's true. It doesn't always have to be, you don't always have to leave a career, do you, to set up your own business or something. No. It's just having outlets, I like that word, whether it's volunteering, whether it's a hobby, and it's something that you put in a few hours a week doing. Yeah. I mean, in some ways, that was a podcast, how we started. It was something fun, something creative, did on the weekend.
Yeah.
So you've now moved into the fitness sphere.
Yeah.
Hard to say. So you were going to classes. So what was the transition? So you said your mum and dad helped you out to set up.
So actually,
in terms of
very
the
good
studio.
friends of ours, there was an old auction house in Whitley Bay, and they bought it and opened a hairdressers, and they're really good friends. And I'd looked for properties and nothing had been quite right. And Jen, my friend, they've got so-and-so hairdressing on Whitley Bay, a little plug, great hairdressers. She came to me and said, we've got this upstairs, we can't use the massive property and we're not going to do anything for it. This is your chance. You know, you've talked about this almost. So actually everything fell into place. It's that whole thing, the universe. Once you make a decision, things fell into place like crazily to the point... Melissa, so I knew I wanted to offer bar. I wanted it to be a bit different, and I wanted bar and dance, just like a ballet bar, not a bar to drink, just in case people are wondering. What is that?
Bar
yeah, coming along.
Rum and Coke, please.
So yeah, I put this up there, BARRE, on this, but I actually had nobody, and I didn't know who I was going to ask, and it was weeks before, because I'd never run a business, and I was reacting, I've got to do this, literally one step after another, plodding along. Actually got the frontage done, and I was opening in about a week. Bar, we offer indoor cycling, Pilates, yoga, bar. I was like, oh my, I've got to get a teacher. And I literally went through Facebook, rang the first person I found who was local, who is Melissa Black, who runs Black Spa again. She's really amazing. And she was teaching at the time. She's come out of teaching now. And she came along, met in the 2 days she had free were our 2 slots. It was just, and she's been a perfect fit. So yeah, there've been things like that just blow your mind a little bit. You think, yeah, I've got to be on the right path if this is going. So our philosophy is, the way I set the studio up, we don't do a lot of nutritional side of things. It might come, but I just wanted somewhere where all ages felt welcome. You didn't feel intimidated walking in the door. Small class sizes, good support from instructors, and we do have an amazing team. And also that whole thing where you don't feel guilty if you don't come for a bit. So literally, if we see someone once a month and they've been busy, and they don't have to explain that to us, so we'll not take away the pay as you go. We do have members now because it was expensive for them coming as pay as you go. But yeah, you know, pat yourself on the back if you come twice a week and that's what you can fit in, rather than I should have been 5 times. It's about that, and just keeping a happy, relaxed mentality about doing different kinds of movement and fitness. And I'm teaching Pilates now. So
great.
Yeah, it's good. I love it.
It's not something I've ever done.
It's really good for you.
I like the meme, which is, I'm sorry, Pilates. I thought you said pie and lattes.
I haven't seen that.
No, thank you.
It's a bit like the bar, isn't it?
That's so committed.
Yeah, there's no pie. You'll be disappointed, James.
Because there's some yoga on, isn't there, that I've signed up for in November. Yoga for blokes.
Yes,
so to call it locally.
Yes.
So I'm open-minded, so I've signed up for that. So if anyone else is
come along too.
Get your husbands, boyfriends, whatever.
It's so good for you.
When's that?
3rd of November, I think, is
yes.
the 4th.
Sunday, isn't it?
Sunday, the 3rd or the 4th. We'll double check.
I'm going to look at my calendar while we're even talking.
Nick's brilliant. He's got loads of experience. He was a teacher
3rd of November,
who came out of teaching and now teaches yoga. And he does something called chi running as well. He runs retreats. Fab chap. And I think it's just getting it so it's not intimidating. So it doesn't have to be about the whole yogi lifestyle, which is often out there. Just come and feel the physical benefits first. If you want to take those other elements away from it, great. But so good for your mind and body just to move and do different things.
Looking forward to it. As a former rugby player, I'm probably as flexible as a concrete pole.
But
so I'm sort of...
It's a good analogy.
There's a few. I listened to, if you've not heard of David Goggins, who's used to be in the Navy SEALs, but runs a lot of endurance events.
All right.
And he went from weighing, I think it was close to 300 pounds, and lost a lot of weight, and not one to listen with the kids.
Right, okay.
But
that way.
he talked a lot about, he got into stretching a lot more. He was doing events where you're running for 24 hours, for example.
Yeah.
But when he started stretching, I'm trying to think how he described it, but his body changed and how it healed, how he felt after an event.
Well, lack of mobility is a huge thing, and obviously gets worse as you get older. But it's like Ryan Giggs, he credits
of course.
his footballing career being so long because he did regular yoga. Tom Hanks said it's the greatest thing you can do. I was like, wow, it's got to be good.
Tom said it. We've got to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Got to believe him.
So there's so many benefits to all of these different things, and I think not just doing one thing. Mm-hmm. Give different things a try. You'll not get bored, and you feel the benefits of moving in a different way. But I think coming back to the Pilates for me with medicine dentistry. So I struggled a bit with stress in dentistry. A lot of dentists do, and a lot of people in other professions do. I mean, I had tingling hands. We're in awful posture a lot of the time.
Yeah. Well,
so
dentists have bad backs, don't they?
Bad backs, bad necks. Yeah, it's really bad from that point of view. Wearing loops helps. There are things you can do to help. Dental nurses as well, they have to bend for the dentist sometimes. You know, sometimes the dentist chooses their position.
Strange though is, in other professions where, let's say you're working with machinery or you've got health and safety training and practices, is this a task that a human should be performing? Lifting boxes, we can't have a human do that.
Yeah.
Whereas when you think about it,
taking a tooth out,
it's almost well the fact that you are bending over for such a long time, if that was in a manufacturing environment,
you wouldn't be allowed.
There would be workplace lawsuits for it's detrimental to the health of your workforce. So I don't know why that's. But what can you do with dentistry? What would change?
There are things you can do. Obviously, wearing loops to magnify helps. You can keep a straighter back. There are ways you can sit. There are things you can do. However, you might get an 85-year-old lady popping in for a root canal on the quite posterior tooth, and she'll be like, I can't lean back. You can't lean me back. I'm going to get dizzy. So. Some people, it's extremely difficult. Or it might be an emergency. You need to do something there and then to relieve pressure in her mouth, and she can't recline. So you just have to bend in silly ways. Sometimes you take breaks, you watch it, but it's a career hazard for sure. Pilates.
Sorry to go back to Pilates.
I was going to say Pilates. Yeah, Pilates helped me with that, but. It is stressful. I mean, I worried I had MS. I had tingling down my hands. Dentists have a lot of symptoms often from different things, and you're scared to go and get help because then it's on your insurance. So you get yourself in this thing of escalating what it might be, what it could be, but you're scared to find out it might not be. And you can end up in an awful place, and I know a lot of people have, including me. I ended up going to a neurologist, and he was like, it's nothing, it'll go away. But Pilates and regular movement can help with that. So I used to keep 2 tennis balls under my desk and between patients. There's amazing things you can do with tennis balls to relieve tension in your back and neck. There's an awful lot you can do. So I'm hoping in time, I think healthcare professionals, not just dentists, nurses, OTs, there's a lot of bending in difficult positions. I think these people, surgeons, doctors, a lot of, as I say, all healthcare professionals are generally quite caring people and put themselves bottom of the ladder. They'll do all sorts of things and put themselves last. So I think I'd love to get an intervention where these people are benefiting on a daily basis from a short Pilates practice and seeing the benefit of that and just not letting things escalate to the point where you get a severe injury or you're feeling really stressed out. So that's in the future where I would hopefully like to take it, but little way off that. Just doing some preliminary investigations of what length of time would work for people, that sort of thing.
That sounds, so you could potentially, would you take that sort of service to other people, or would that be part of the studio setup?
I see it as sort of a separate thing. So probably going out. They haven't got time to come to me, a lot of these people. So it would be going out, doing seminars, and then probably an online course once they knew what they were doing. Go home. There's a lot of simple things you can do to make an improvement. And I think mindset has to change. Like you said, taking responsibility for yourself and making the small changes that you can, like making a packed lunch, like things that we all don't do, and then you eat the rubbish at lunch. It's dead easy. It's hard to stay in that routine. Anything to keep consistency is hard, and also supporting each other. I think the chap that wrote that book, Adam Kay, This Is Going to Hurt. Have you read that?
No.
It's quite an eye opener. He was an obstetrician, and that sounds basically at the time when they were working crazy hours actually when my brother was a junior doctor, and he wrote a diary every day, and he's written this book, and it's really brutally honest. It's quite close to the bone at times, but he was clearly a really compassionate fella, and he ended up leaving. He now writes comedy for TV, but it's about his journey. And one of the things he said, when you're working all these hours, you don't mind doing it. A lot of people are in the right career but end up burning out or leaving because they're not being supported, either supporting themselves or within. He said some days just that one cup of tea, someone bringing you a cup of tea made a difference for a week, but everyone's too busy. And I don't know, I think it's a hard environment for a lot of people, so there's a lot of change needs to happen, and we'll probably just need to be a bit kinder to each other in an ideal world.
Okay, so if you had to go back to 16, 17, 18-year-old Steph, what advice would you give her?
It is a tough one, that, but I wouldn't change going into the careers I did, because I gained loads from it. I have zero regrets about that, but I would say don't sweat the small stuff. I spent an awful lot of time with crazy worries. It became a big part of who I was, and I had different ways of managing that. My brother actually wrote that on my 18th birthday card, don't sweat the small stuff. I didn't listen for quite a while. So there would definitely be that one. It was actually a Jen Sincero quote. That was the first ever self-help ebook I ever read.
So it's literally, it's the first Audible book that I've asked my niece/apprentice to listen to.
Oh, Sophie, you'll love it. Yeah. Well, I didn't know any. This is all quite new to me. I know we're in circles where people have been doing this shit for years. Yeah. But I hadn't. And when I was off with my broken wrist, we were supposed to be skiing, and I was stuck at the chalet with my little one, and I downloaded this book, and I just really connected to a lot of what you had to say, and I was like, wow, you can just visualise, and this is actually work. And but one of the things she said that stuck with me was worrying is like praying for something you don't want to happen. And I don't know why it struck such a chord, but I tried everything. I've tried distraction, but I think it's almost like the reverse of obsessive compulsive thoughts, isn't it? Actually thinking, if I ruminate on this, and some things you're never going to make, more likely a random car crash or whatever. Yeah. But in my head, it just settled, and I thought, actually, and that really worked for me, and I think that's made the biggest difference. So don't sweat the small stuff, and trust your intuition. I think it's a big one. I know I haven't talked about that, but I think the few times I have made a mistake or done something that I've thought wasn't great, I knew my gut, it wasn't right. And I think those feelings are there for a reason and really true to all of us. And sometimes we ignore them for whatever reason. So I think, I think that would be, and also the other, I've got a third one. The last one was that I was quite a people pleaser in school. I was bullied for a couple of years, I think that brings out in you, keeping everyone happy. Maybe is part of why I chose the careers I did. And I just think everyone doesn't have to love you or even particularly like you. Sometimes, keeping everyone happy, and they're my three things.
I harped on for months and months and months that James should watch The Greatest Showman.
Great.
And so when he did watch it, he was like,
great.
Why didn't you tell me how good it was?
I did.
But there's a quote. So Charity Barnum says to the dude in it, I can't remember his name at the moment for some reason. Not everyone has to love you, just a few good people.
Yeah.
And so
Well, that's just giving me goosebumps. It's absolutely true. And I think we spend, especially when you're young, you spend all that time pleasing people you probably don't even really like.
No.
And it's like, it's a mutual thing. Just let that go. Yeah. It's a great movie though, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
I have to watch it again.
Have you seen that behind the scenes Hugh Jackman when he's...
No.
That makes me cry every year. Tear signs. It's great though, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's lovely. No, he's a nice dude.
Yes. Yeah, love you. Oh, get him on as a guest.
Oh yes, he's on the list. Don't worry.
I'm building up to it. Yeah.
But maybe that's one for Sophie and I to do, not James.
Oh, poor James.
No, we will be. Don't worry.
Can I come?
Yeah. We're selling tickets for that one. Cool.
That's a good idea. It's got me thinking actually. Yeah. So for anyone interested in Studio Velo, what is the best way to find you or get in touch?
So you can find us in the centre of Whitley Bay on Parkview, or we have a website, www.velofitness.co.uk. You can book via the website or we have an app called Glowfox that we use. On Facebook, we are at Velo Health, or at Velo Health Studio, I can't remember. And we're also on Instagram as Studio Velo Fitness.
Yeah, we'll put all the links in the usual places. Well, it's been great. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for chatting to us.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
And we've had Sophie here, our apprentice, for the first time, so it's her first experience. So hopefully she's enjoyed it. We don't have a microphone, unfortunately, so we'll just take the smiles and the thumbs up as it was awesome.
A smile and a thumbs up.
Great stuff. Thanks, Steph.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Check out all the show notes at inspirationnorth.com. Join us again for the next episode when we'll be chatting to another inspirational person. If you like this, subscribe and tell your friends. If you didn't like this, subscribe anyway and tell everybody.